Public meeting of the City of Tallahassee Independent Ethics Board is now called to order at 4:05 on Tuesday, February 18th, 2025. The board members are present here at the Tallahassee Room in City Hall, along with members of the public. With the assistance of the Communications Department and the Information Technology Department, this meeting is live streamed on the Ethics Board's website, and we are recording it for future reference. There is a delay with online communications, and we should all be patient. As always, we thank those members of the City of Tallahassee for their support. For those attending the meeting online, please make sure your microphone is muted. We ask the public to email ethics@talgov.com if they wish to speak online on agenda or non-agenda items. Those who have submitted their names will be allowed to speak as scheduled. While the meeting is in progress, please do not speak during the board's discussion. We have set aside 2 places on the agenda for the public to speak. For those who wish to make a public comment, please complete a speaker request form and forward it to the administrative specialist, Mr. Leverson Green. Be sure to state what you wish to speak about on the form. Public speakers will be given up to 3 minutes in accordance with the board's bylaws. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please have our roll call.
Kristen Costa.
Here.
Patrick Kelly.
Here.
Adam Commissar.
Here.
Rika Calhoun. Caroline Clanky.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Approval of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes from the last meeting in December? Any questions or concerns? Not, I will entertain a motion.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Kelly makes a motion and Mr. Commissar seconds the motion to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next, do we have any public comment on agenda items?
No.
We will move on to the ethics office report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did not have a meeting in January, so this covers from from the date of the last meeting until February 10th, when we stopped recording referrals and the like. We conducted employee ethics training. We prepared to conduct training for city officials and their aides. We had it scheduled. Then I was called away to a funeral. And so I ended up canceling. And if anybody wants to be sad, don't be sad. It was my aunt. She lived to be 99 years old. She lived on her own terms. She died on her own terms. So it was all good, but I had to stop and take care of family. So we'll work with rescheduling that. We responded to, in December, John and I discovered an ordinance that basically said that Brian Smith was not eligible, should not have been appointed. There is in policy, city policy, it says a year. You have to have a year's gap. And in my mind, that's what I've been going with up to this point. And apparently the city was thinking that when they appointed him and notified us. We were both looking at the same thing at 2 different times, and we both came across the ordinance that says a 3-year gap is required specifically for this board, not for any of the other 30-some boards, specifically for this board. Due to the difficulty, we had conversations with the city attorney's office, and due to the difficulties in appointing people, as I stated in the news article, when everybody was upset about things that were occurring, we had a long list of people, and that list is narrowed. There are fewer people interested in fixing the world, so to speak. So it's become harder. And so to make it easier, what we discussed was changing that ordinance to 1 year, consistent with the city's policy. In order for that to happen, uh, there had to be, it had to be read. The ordinance change had to be read in one meeting, and then it had to be voted on doing a hearing at the next meeting. So in January, the city commission took it, they read it, there was no comment. They brought it back last week during hearing at 6 o'clock and unanimously approved changing it from a 3-year gap to a 1-year gap. So that means that any of you, after your term expires, wait 1 year and you can come back and and we'll be looking you up to call you. So in the meantime, there was discussion about whether Brian was eligible. And the way it read, he could have been without any change because it said that the 3-year gap was based on the appointment rather than the end of the term. So it was really, the way it was written, you would never expire. It was just screwed up. So we had constitutionalists to my right who said we should go by what's written. Textualist, okay, let me get it right. Textualist over here who said that we should go by the way it's written, which I think most of us, that's what you do because it doesn't matter what was intended. What matters is how people interpret what was written. So he had a legitimate argument. However, the city saw it different. And I didn't see arguing with the city, especially since it was their appointment. Their understanding and their position is that he needed to be reappointed, which they attempted to do. And then the mayor said he wanted to wait until the next meeting for the sake of transparency. So it will be, and their next meeting is not until March 26th. So at that point, hopefully they will appoint somebody and have somebody back on the board. But that's, at that point, it's all on them. Any questions about that? Concerns? Okay. I was invited to speak to a graduate class, public administrative class at FSU. I do that about twice a year. Always have fun doing that. They ask me questions, but I ask them questions back. They're just interested in how an ethics office works, what makes it important, things of that nature. So, I speak freely and from the heart, and it's usually a good session. We have begun development of the new annual course that's required for all employees. It's going to center around conflict of interest. And that wasn't my suggestion. That was actually a suggestion of one of the employees. I was speaking to some employees and they actually said to me, I didn't solicit it. They said, before you all got here, a lot of things went on, but a lot of that has stopped because you all are here. And I don't mean me, I don't mean you, I mean the ethics board from its origination back in 2014, someone who had been around. And that same group suggested we talk about conflict of interest when they can take up outside employment versus not. And we got some of that in our advisory opinion. So I'm going to get some scenarios from them and we'll work from there. So we're doing that. Monitoring newly elected officials, they had to take new training after 60 days. They both completed that. And then there was a makeup course that we needed the city officials to take for 2024. So we were making sure that they took that training. Then we had the usual administrative duties, referrals, and preparation for this meeting. And that leads to the budget. As you can see, we spent a lot of money, more than usual. And part of that, a lot of this expense is Kogel conference. And in one sense, it looked like we were spending money all over the place. But the way that the city had us itemize it is the way we present it to you. We actually filled out a form and all but a certain part of it was paid through that form. We itemize it here. We have legal services for January. Gandy printing, we printed 600 ethics guides. We provide those to new employees every time we do new employee training. We have city cell phone, which is routine. The award that we gave in December, including the mug, and then a few things we paid for the Dollar Tree and Publix for food and core for the last meeting. Ticklet software, I pay this fee every year. The separate fee for Tasker, so she can also develop, produce training. So at some point you'll see that. And and this is expenses from probably the middle of December to last week. So included in all of this. When you look at the budget itself, we started with 463,000. We now have about 395,000, and we're into the 6th month. So all in all, we're doing very well with that budget. Any questions or concerns about budget and all this money that has been spent?
As a reminder, was your registration the same price, or did we get a second registration at a discounted price for the Kogel conference?
Well,
Maybe that was on the last one, but
yeah,
I can't remember.
I get, as a member, I get a discounted price.
So it was about the same-ish or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was something like 600, and for people who are not Kogel, it's 1,300. And then I'm allowed to, John doesn't have to be a member. He could a sub member under me, so he gets a discount. And if anybody with the city wants to go, they could be a sub member and get a discount. So,
Why did you stick him at a Holiday Inn?
not only did I stick him at a Holiday Inn, I stuck him
more.
I stuck him at a Holiday Inn because we waited late, and that was totally my fault that I waited late to ask him to come. But I did. I stuck him in the hood. He heard gunshots.
For the record, it was a Holiday Inn Express.
So
textualist.
you came out a better attorney then.
Yes.
For those of us who are in attendance and who are watching, Kogel is the Council on Governmental Ethics Laws.
Right.
And so it's a really helpful, all state ethics commissions all over the United States, but also voting, like the voting component of it, the elections law component of it is a large part.
Campaign finance.
Lobbying, campaign finance, transparency of like every ilk is discussed there, but it's incredibly beneficial for thought leaders and educators such as yourself.
We learn, and it's good to know what the rest of the world is doing.
Yeah.
And what the other states are doing, and even what the other organizations within Florida, because we meet them there. All the state officials, we continue to have a good relationship with them, and I can call them anytime I need some. Miami-Dade.
Yeah.
We collaborate, so it's a good place for us to meet. Next year will be in Atlanta, and we're looking forward to it. 6C, we didn't have any complaints. We had a number of referrals, and I will only refer to the second one, Don Fickman. And I'm referring to that one because you'll probably see that one every month. I can't tell you how many phone calls I've gotten from her. The first one I received referred to the county. I sent it to the county, and they actually opened an investigation because something in what she said was accurate in terms of where a police car and police officer had been at a certain time. But she didn't have a really, she has not given us anything specific. She's been very general about certain concerns. Today I received an email. It was supposed to be an anonymous email, but I could tell by the way it was written and what was said that it was 90%, 99% chance it was the same person. And I also did some other checking to see what I could find out about the person and the phone number. And I was able to find that they were in other states. and on the wrong side of the law on some of those issues. So I'm just letting you know, so if you see these complaints, like, start talking about things like human trafficking and other stuff you talk about, it is worth being concerned about. But she even said that I didn't need to call her back, but I did. And then she asked me not to call her back. And she always calls when I'm not in the office intentionally, like 12 something in the morning, on weekends, very deliberate. So if you see that, you know why I'm not, I did look thoroughly into it. So as did the county before they dismissed it. Any questions about the referral? No voters.
General update?
General updates, you have the meeting schedule and the, Tasker passed it out, so you have the meeting schedule for the year. You can always know it's gonna be here unless we tell you otherwise. It's always the third Tuesday at 4 o'clock. So, unless you hear something otherwise, like there was a leak and we had to go find a place. But otherwise, it's gonna be here. So please you can leave the notebook, but take that schedule with you. Last year, end of summer into the fall, you all made recommendations for changes to the ordinance. We waited until after the elections and the holidays. So we'll start working those up to give to the board, hopefully starting in March. We'll work with the chair. It'll be under the chair's signature. So we'll refresh that at the next meeting so everybody know. I think Attorney Clinky is the only one that wasn't involved, so I'll send you the information just so you'll be up to speed on it. But just let you know what's ahead. And then you've already met the new city attorney liaison, is Kathy Hood. She's taken the place of Jennifer Painter, who took the place of Amy Ullman. And of course, Amy is in charge. She's the city attorney and she makes herself available as needed. And so those are the people that we're working with from that regard. And that's the general information.
Okay. Next, we have proposed revision to the bylaws.
Yes, first, from a procedural standpoint, our bylaws provide for amendments to the bylaws to be by a majority vote. However, they may not be acted upon until the following meeting unless the amendment was included in the notice for the meeting, the time for public comment is allowed, and the amendment is approved by a 2/3 vote of the members present. And then not less than 5 days prior to the meeting, members shall be sent a copy of such proposed change. So we sent it out Thursday, which is 5 days. It was included in the notice. Public comment was allowed. So we can act on it tonight if we have a 2/3 vote. So just consider that when you make a motion, if you make a motion. So previously our bylaws, as far as terms and term limits, simply referred to the ordinance and did not provide any substantive language. Because of some of the hiccups that we've experienced in the last few months, we thought it best to include some, just kind of flesh it out, kind of even flesh out what the ordinance does as well. So I guess maybe let's move around, but if you go to the ordinance, which is this ordinance number 25-0-03, which is on page 5. You can see there was a little cleanup. The chief judge was changed to the public defender by charter, but it had never been changed to the ordinance, which was something we kind of all thought had been done. So, but we've been operating under the charter nevertheless. Towards the bottom, you see the 3-year changed to the 1 year. You see as appointments, we've changed that to terms, which, as we discussed earlier, I think was the intent. However, plain language is 3 years between the appointments, which is a single act. But I think we now have it where they want it to be, which is the time you vacate the seat until the time you go to your next meeting. And instead of 3 years, will be 1 year. So that is the change in the ordinance. So what we have done is we included the language with the term limits of the 2 terms.
Page 3.
And that would be, yes, and we're moving back to page 3. So we mirror the ordinance, limiting it to full terms, 2 full terms. And we provide for the 1 year separation between the service of those terms. Now, we have language here, and this is some where I think probably if we have any discussion today, this will be where it will be, is which terms are considered terms. So the way our practice has been over the years is if a member resigns in the middle of a term and you are appointed to fill in that middle of that term, the remainder of that term doesn't count towards your term limits, and then you start the next time the term flips over. However, if the term expires naturally, but the appointing agency does not fill the seat promptly, you don't get all that free time moving forward. And that's the way it's been done in the past. I think it's how with Carlos, that's how it was applied with him and I think others. And that is the policy of the city. So now if you flip to the back, beginning at page 7 is City Commission Policy 120. So the way I drafted the bylaws was simply to mirror the city policy, so everybody could be on the same page. And they essentially say, if you come in because somebody either vacated the seat midterm or somebody dies or is removed, then moving forward, that does not count towards your 2 full consecutive terms. However, if the seat comes open and it just doesn't get filled on time, and then you come in late, your term is deemed retroactive to the date it first came open for that appointment for purposes of term limits only. So that's what the city policy is. So that's what we reflected in our bylaws. Now, the policy, I think it's important to point out, is applicable to committees. Hold on the exact language. City commission authorized committees, citizens appointed by the commission to serve on committees. So technically, this does not apply to us. So even though I've used it for consistency purposes, it's my opinion, we're not bound to. So that would be, I guess, your preference on how you would like to proceed. So, Article 3, Section B1, simply mirrors the language that's in the ordinance. Article 3, Section B2 distinguishes between the 2 types of vacancies when the clock doesn't start till later and when the clock starts retroactively, depending on how that seat becomes vacant. And then in Article 3, Section B3, that really is to kind of explain why we do it this way. We want the terms to be staggered, and if we just said, okay, you come in, now we do the 3 years start, that we might start having a situation where people are all leaving and being appointed at the same time. So ultimately, the goal is to keep it so these terms are staggered. And so that is the bylaw amendment. So if you have any questions or comments, I'd be happy to entertain.
Any questions for Mr. Reed?
Oh, yeah, okay. Thank you. So I did go and I pulled different jurisdictions. The ones that we tend to talk to most are Naples, Miami-Dade County, and Jacksonville. Now, the gentleman who started the Naples was an attorney with the Miami-Dade, so they're almost identical in how they practice. So they have staggered 4-year terms instead of 3, and they have no term limits whatsoever. Jacksonville, which is what we were modeled after. And if you look at the 3-year gap between the term limits, that appears to be where it came from. It just language didn't, it got messed up in 2015 here in the city. But they have staggered 3-year terms. You cannot serve more than 2 consecutive terms. They also have that, they also distinguish between the way the terms, but instead of it being triggered by how it becomes vacant, they treat it as if you have less than 2 years. So whether it becomes open because whoever was responsible for the appointment just didn't do it right away, or whether somebody vacated the seat or died or resigned or whatever, that's immaterial. All that matters is, would it be less than 2 years? If it's less than 2 years, then it would not apply. And you would get 2 terms after the next term starts. But if it's 2 years or more, then it would be retroactive, and then you would only get 1 additional 3-year term. So that's another option we could play around with. Or we could go with the way that the city does.
Mr.
I actually like that. I mean, if you want somebody to really serve 2 full terms, and one of these appointing agencies chooses to drag, as we're experiencing, and that person doesn't get appointed till the last year of that 3-year term, even though it's a term, in our current language, it's not really fair to that individual. They don't really get to serve 2 full terms. So I think it's just my proposal, if we could come to an agreement on what, I think they did 2 years because there were 4-year terms in Jacksonville. Is that correct?
No, 3 years.
Oh, so it's 3 years also. So we could use similar language. That's just my thoughts. I think anybody who's enthusiastic enough to appoint this, I know I would feel that way. I want to serve full terms because I want to be involved and help shape this board. And if I get appointed with only 1 year left in the term, I don't think that's fair to me to count it as 1 full term. Just one humble opinion.
Any other thoughts on either way, either the way that it's written or potentially substituting for some of the language that Mr. Reed was just mentioning?
I think keeping consistency with the city's manner of doing it, I think is well written and advisable
Mhm.
in the instant case. So I think that as written, the clarifications and the edits, I think, are laudable.
So let me understand, the way it's currently written, if today a position opens because the person expired out, it opens today and it's 3 years, when it's filled, it's 3 years from today that it expires, position. And someone doesn't get appointed till 2 years down the road, it's counted as a full term. That's the way it's currently written.
We could use the Carlos Ray seat,
The what?
the Carlos Ray seat, which person should have started on January 1,
Right.
but we're still here with nobody.
Sure.
So let's say they don't come in until the April meeting. For purposes of term limits, it would be retroactive. So they would be able to finish this 3-year term. And
Correct.
they'd have 1 additional term, and then they'd be termed out.
And that makes sense to me, but that's only a couple of months. You know, I'm talking about if somebody we've had the situation where somebody drags their feet and we don't get somebody appointed for a long term, then I would like to see that person, get their full term. Just, again, one opinion. Doesn't matter to me either way. I just think that'd be.
Yeah, and that is a few months. There's,
Yeah.
theoretically, if the appointing body said, oh, there's 2 months left on the term, okay, finally, I'm going to do it now.
Yeah.
That person gets 2 months, and under this, it would now be, that would count for a whole term.
Right.
Now, that hasn't happened yet. I think we've had 18 months. Was somebody waited 18 months to appoint?
So if it's a rare occasion, it's not a big deal. It's just, it seems fair to the individual being appointed that they actually get what would be considered 2 full terms. And the reason I bring that up is this way, when we worked on the commission, I worked with the commission, is that if you were finishing the term of someone else, it didn't count as a full term.
Right. I mean, that part still applies if you're finishing somebody else's term. No matter how long or short it is, it wouldn't count.
Sure.
But if, and you do have that choice. You could put in that caveat or create your own, whatever you think is fair. The reason we move so quickly to change it from a 3-year gap to a 1-year gap, same reason the city has that 1-year gap, is that it's hard to fill. And for me, when I get good people, if they want to stay, then, there's nothing we can do.
Well, either position is reasonable, and I raised the flag and nobody saluted it other than me, so I'm okay with that.
Well, and I definitely like that wording, but I do feel like the consistency
Yeah.
with the city policy is just nice across the board and plays nice also with our counterparts. And makes it, I don't want to say easy, but easier, where we don't have this confusion.
Conflict,
Oh,
yeah.
wait, the ethics board is a little different than it'd just be kind of a little more across the board is my thought, as much as I hear what you're saying. And if I was appointed late, I would be disappointed as well if that happens. Any other thoughts?
I move to vote yes on the current language, the language being
As it
proposed,
stands?
as
Okay.
proposed.
We have we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so Mr. Kelly makes a motion and Ms. Klinke seconds, this bylaws amendment as written. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sorry, Rika, did you want to say anything about it? I didn't want to leave you off.
Oh, thank you so much. I wasn't sure if I could talk or what the rules were about being online. So, okay. So yes. So, in listening to the conversation, I do, I do agree that it would be that any way that we could, I do support the idea of, trying to avoid someone, coming in really late in their first term and that counting for their whole term. But that was my only comment, but I do support the motion.
Sorry, I should have asked you before, but I did want
Sorry,
to.
that was, yeah, that was a lot of me. Like, these are all the comments I had. But yes, so I do
No,
support the
that's-
motion. I wasn't sure when I should talk or if I could.
Thank you,
Um,
Ms. Calhoun, for saluting the flag.
And, and as far as, I think just this is after comment is that all of us on the board should work hard to help those agencies get someone ahead of our terms expiring so that we don't with this as much as possible. And if we like what we're doing, then we want someone who is equally as excited or even helping foster find someone that may be interested. Next, we have board member vacancy.
Board member vacancy, and you reminded me, one thing I didn't say in my general update is, Ms. Kelly is reappointed, by the state attorney for another term, so, that's in keeping. Forward. Okay, agenda item 9, as you know, when attorney, Ray left, that created a large vacancy, and you have the privilege of filling that vacancy. We brought it to you in December, in November, but we only had 2 people. You asked us to go back out. Since that time, we advertised in our Capital Outlook, and the Tallahassee Democrat accepted the article. I think John and Chairperson Costa helped us write. It was effective, and to the extent that people called me and that basically said they were moved enough to apply. So that was good. So we went from having 2 to having 6 applicants that are qualified. We had another 4. We had 2 that lived in Leon County. 1 that serves on the Planning Commission, and Article 2 of the Constitution doesn't allow dual office. And then we have 1 person, because I went all the way back to last year applications, and there was somebody named Klinke who had filled out an application a long time ago, so I counted her in the 10, but she's already here, so. So we couldn't include her. So, but I included you in the 10 just because, okay? So, we did end up with 6, and you have them before you, and you have all kind of options. You can, if you feel comfortable, you can select now. You want to talk to the people, you can interview and we could assist in coming up with questions. That's totally up to you all.
Has, I guess honestly, has everyone had a chance to read through them? And if not, that is okay, but I feel like it's really important and only fair to the 6 applicants to have a chance to really look at each person's, and not just go by what people are saying. So if we haven't had a chance to go through collectively, then I would want to put that off until next time when everyone has really had a chance to take this and look through it. If everyone feels like they've had the chance and have had the time to look through, then I certainly open for discussion on these members or applicants, not members yet.
Unless anyone has not had the opportunity, I agree with that. But I also think in the spirit of our conversation on the very last resolution or change to our ordinance, we should try to today come up with somebody if we're ready, If
Yeah.
someone's not ready, they should declare I'm not ready, but
And
if
that's
we're
okay.
ready-
No judging. Life gets busy, but I would give these 6 their due.
I mean, today, Ms. Calhoun wouldn't be able to vote, would she?
She can vote.
She could be part of the discussion, though.
Discussion, but wouldn't be able to vote.
I think she can. Hold on, let me.
I think she can't be counted as quorum.
Oh, quorum, but
Right,
she
you
can
can
vote,
vote.
okay. And then when do we think the city's gonna fill their spot? Because if we're gonna have one more member at the next meeting, that would be one more person that
At
could.
the
Could
earliest,
consider these.
March 26th, at the earliest.
That's the next, city
That's the
commission meeting.
next city commission meeting, yes.
That's after our next.
So April 15th would be the
Our
next
next
time
meeting,
that, the next time that the city appointee would be here.
Does Rika Calhoun, do you feel, like you've had enough time to consider the applicants?
Yes.
I, for one, did carefully go through the applicants, and I thought that all 6 are incredibly well qualified, and I think it speaks of our community's investment in the great work that we do, that we have such qualified candidates. I mean, I think that all 6 truly are superlative. I mean, even those that the dual office holding impediment that has precluded some from even being considered. I think it's the caliber of individuals, I think is superlative. And so I have, some thoughts about those that I think would be uniquely well suited to hit the ground running. But I don't think that any of the 6 this board would be a deficit.
Agreed. And does anyone feel like we need to interview? Because that would be another option that we would have, but I feel like these do kind of speak for themselves and I feel, since you were mentioning, would you like to kick off some conversation? And we can just kind of go from there. And again, this is not total pros and cons for everyone, anyone in particular, but anybody that spoke to you that you were feeling, and then we can just kind of open dialogue. And, Rika, Ms. Calhoun, please feel free to speak up if there's something that you would like to say as well.
Yes, so I would agree with that. And I actually I was thinking of ranking in my head. So, absolutely kicking off the conversation because I thought all candidates had, unique qualifications that they could contribute.
I agree with her. I think what I did is I went through them and I ranked them my top 3, 1, 2, and 3. They're all qualified, or you wouldn't have presented them to us. And I'll be upfront. I like to see diversity of background. So I wasn't going out of my way to pick an attorney. That's because we have plenty of attorneys on the board already. But that said, my top candidate ended up being an attorney. So you got to go with their resume and what their background is. So at any point, I'd be willing to tell you who those 3 top candidates are. Okay.
Since
All
you're,
right.
you have
My-
the floor
my-
and we can.
My top candidate was Mary Alice H. David. And then behind her, I had Bonnie Godham Bailey, and then I had Laureen Grubbs. Those are my top three. I guess that puts us in a position with names for everybody to jump in. I really liked the number one I mentioned because of her background in the military, and it was with ethics and policy, and a lot of the background is directly related to the kind of things we do. So that's the one thing that jumped out most about her.
Anybody else have? What's her comment?
I did not rank them, but I share the thought that Mary Alice David, um, in addition to the resume, the statement of experience, the experience that this individual has with the board itself has to understand and be able to interpret and apply ordinances and the requirements of ethics contained and set forth in rules. This person has attorney agency experience and military Air Force JAG experience interpreting and applying compliance, ethics type compliance requirements and regulations that would really be beneficial to the work that the board does. We review advisory opinions that applies the city's ordinances to actual facts. And so this would be incredibly helpful. That rule application and interpretation is something that even as we suggest annually improvement to the city's ordinances, the city solicits from this organization, that would be something that she could assist with and give direction to our chief ethics officer and would be beneficial. I think the experience and acumen, knowledge, and I don't want to just load us all up with attorneys, but I think that more than just the attorney credentials, the individual has ethics, comprehension, and application, interpretation, and enforcement, giving guidance and helping with compliance. I think that's something that's invaluable. I also thought that Laureen Grubbs, who had experience with the FSU College of Nursing, that was quite substantial. I think that that person has an administrative experience that could be incredibly beneficial, but I'm willing to, I also liked Bonnie Dogham Bailey. I thought that as a former agency employee with the Department of Health, I think that would be something beneficial for our board. But I would like to listen to the opinions and thoughts because I'm not by any means wed to any particular candidate. And I thought that all the applicants were incredibly well.
I would say the Mary Alice David, it really looks like the resume and the application of somebody applying to be one of these guys. Like they really, I mean, if this is a volunteer willing to serve volunteer, like it does appear they're actually qualified to be an ethics officer or attorney on this type of board, so.
Yeah.
Well, I'll add.
It says they're
I'll add to that.
retired. It says they're
Just
retired.
just like you bring a background from the state level that actually we can draw on all of us, makes her such an asset. This woman can bring a federal perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, 'cause she had to interpret federal ethics laws in the military and apply them when requested. So I think she brings a ton of information that, we may benefit from. So just something to add to that.
And I didn't really have strong feelings about anybody, but it's your top one and it's your top one. It's clearly well qualified and seems to fit, so I've got no problem with it.
Potentially that.
So my candidates were Laureen Grubbs. I felt like her background she's taught ethics courses. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. She has a very background. So she and Mary Alice Davis, her background was just incredible. So like for me, it was just having that diverse experience of the higher ed, the healthcare fields, ethics in the healthcare fields, and being able to apply that here, and her community work. Um, those two are either one I felt really good about. And then William McDaniel was also on my list, only because he had lobbying experience, and we've had a couple of areas that we've discussed this year related to lobbying, and I felt like having someone with that experience on the other side to contribute might be helpful. So he made my list as well.
Um, I had very similar thoughts. I was trying to think if there was anything that I felt like I needed to speak. Again, looking at these, I was very proud of the applicants that turned out based off of hopefully what we put out that we would like to see in people. And I do feel like that call, I feel like 6 people is a lot. Well, 10 ultimately, but 6 that we were able to truly, as I was reading, I was like, oh, I could see that person be a good one because this, oh, well, that would really be helpful too. But I think the arguments that you guys have made, and it seems like kind of the top 2 that are rising would be Miss David and Miss Grubbs. And I think both for some of their experience that we have, as much as, again, you don't always want to stack the deck, whether it's with attorneys or things like that, but people that still have ethics experience. I mean, we all want to think that we are ethical people, but there's something for your own personal interpretation of ethics, as Mr. Floyd finds out when he does all these courses for new employee hires, that not everyone really understands it. So people that already have some background in it, whether it's in the teaching for Ms. Grubbs' sake, or Ms. David for the teaching and or the experiencing, is that I think those are really great qualities. And if we have people that have applied that have those qualities already, I do think we would be almost remiss to not have them be, I say, our top 2 at the moment for that reason, because we do have people that have that experience. And that is what this board is. It's not just a nice board that we like a lot of people who are good. It's truly an ethics board, and we can only be stronger and help each other more if we have more background for that. Do we entertain a motion or a vote? How do we do this, Mr. Floyd?
Well, you've eliminated Brian Parker, you've eliminated William Jack. Probably could eliminate William McDaniel. There's one person in favor. Did you have any choices? I have them from everybody.
Not given where you're going, not strong enough about these top 3 that I think you're narrowing it down.
Okay.
Beyond, I mean, Mary Alice David probably being my number 1, but of the rest, I think there's clearly top 3.
Okay. So your top 3
Yes.
are Mary H. David, Bonnie Bailey, and Lauren Grubbs. And there was more favor toward Lorraine Grubbs. You could probably remove Bunny Bailey. The other 2 have both received 1 ranking. So I would say your choice now is between David and Grubbs. Yeah.
You said, based on what you narrowed it to, I don't have a preference. Does that mean that you had a preference that he removed?
No,
Okay.
no, based on kind of what the group had narrowed it down to, when he had said that first 3 versus the other.
Okay, I just want to make sure we didn't rule out anybody.
No, not at all.
Okay.
That's why I appreciate my other brother, Darryl.
I think it's important to articulate, everybody clearly here feels that all 6 candidates are qualified.
Yeah.
We're just trying to make a selection that's going to help this board be the best it can be.
Yeah, and I don't think my additional comments on the other members would supersede the other comments and the rationale for the other 2 that we've kind of seem to have narrowed it down to. So that's why I'm not breaking it all down. But again, as I was going through, I was really excited to read this big stack. I was like, oh gosh, there's another one. Oh, that's really cool that they did that. I was like, that would be great on the board. So again, there were really a lot of great things with each of these applicants.
It's probably a very similar application, so anybody not selected for this can submit it for the city positions when they become open too.
That's correct.
Or submit again for this board when the next opening comes.
But I think you have Miss Mary Alice David and you have Maureen, who are both of the two that received more of all of you all's attention.
So
Well,
do
I'm
we
ready to
vote
make a
on-
motion if I
Do we
can.
motion?
That's, Euring, that's up to you.
I'll start it then. I'll make a motion to nominate Mary Alice H. David as our next board member.
Anyone want to second?
Second.
Okay, Ms.
Can I
Calhoun,
do that?
second. Mr. Kelly makes the motion for Miss Mary Alice David. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? I don't like saying opposed because we're not opposed to anything. So- All right, so we we hope that Miss David will accept our nomination.
We have to do the second.
Thank you guys for that honest, our board members for that honest conversation. When I saw the good applicants, I was a little nervous how it was gonna go. So I'm glad that we all had similar thoughts and that made it easier than I was agonizing over it a little bit, thinking, oh gosh, we've got such good applicants. So thank you for your respect.
So the next natural question is, what's the next step?
I'll contact her and that checklist that you looked at, I'll be using that to go through everything and get her started for the next meeting.
You're a great American.
Thank you all. You all made it easy.
Next, public comment on non-agenda items.
No.
No. Seeing none. Directives. One would be to contact Ms. David about her in a position or a vacancy. Two would be the changes to the ordinance that we were talking about, which I think is already on your list, but I just wanted to make the point. And then we'll just follow up with the city, but that won't be till March. That's kind of. Any other directives that anyone else can
I
think
just
of?
have a question. Since we all voted to move forward with the changes that you proposed to the ordinance, to our ordinance, when will those go into effect?
You mean the bylaws tonight?
Yeah.
Oh, it's effective tonight.
Oh.
Yeah, we voted tonight, so I'll do it and we'll try to get up on the website as soon as possible.
Awesome.
Any other questions? Any other directives that I missed? Okay, that being said, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Billy, this is motion, Mr. Commissar, seconds to adjourn at 4:57.